Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and happy Wednesday. Today is December 27th, 2023. And the top story, the story I just love to talk about, Javier Milei over in Argentina, that wonderful experiment in libertarianism, someone actually giving it a try for a change. Javier Milei is in the news this morning. He is laying off 5,000 government workers. Now, these are all government workers who were hired in 2023. One thing incumbent governments just love to do is pad the payrolls in an election year, driving up those employee counts, buying votes essentially. And Javier Milei came in and said, you know what? Our government was big enough in 2022. Everybody the government hired, all these new contracts that were signed in 2023, we're done with those. Bye-bye. Now we're going to start looking at the ones that came before that. In total, 5,000 were terminated. Now, this is where we find out just how much stomach for austerity the Argentinians have, because austerity doesn't always go over so well, especially when you're the person being ousted or whatever the word is. All right. Government workers, I can just hear the Keynesians right now. I can hear all of the left-wingers out there saying, but how is the economy supposed to grow if the government lays people off? Now those people won't be earning any money, and now they won't have anything to spend, and the economy is going to shrink. There is some truth to that, but most government work, especially in bloated government bureaucracies like they have in Argentina and certainly here in the States, when you have such a big apparatus, you get waste. It is just wasteful spending. And yeah, those people collect a paycheck and they turn around and spend that paycheck into the economy. But the money from that paycheck is being taken out of the economy in the form of taxation. And then there's very little efficiency, very little economic activity generated by that paycheck because of the services that are performed at the government office. And therefore, it is a giant drain on the otherwise prosperous economy. So Milei is doing something that right-wing politicians here in the U.S. have been promising for years and never, ever actually done. He is shrinking the size of government. Somebody pinch me, please. It is possible out there. Also going on, the attacks in the Red Sea are continuing. On Tuesday, day after Christmas, we had, Tuesday was the day after Christmas. I'm sorry. 17 combined drone and missile attacks on ships in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, in and around the BAM, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. 17 attacks. Every single one was intercepted. 12 drones, 5 missiles, including anti-ship cruise missiles. They were intercepted by the USS Laboon, which is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, along with FA-18 Hornets from the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group. So we continue to take this whack-a-mole approach to protecting shipping in the Red Sea. That situation is escalating. The number of attacks daily is increasing. We also, over the last couple of days, we had a ship was attacked off the coast of India. It is unconfirmed, but widely believed that the missile that attacked that ship came from Iran. So it looks like there could potentially be escalations. I would add that the U.S. is yet to make any offensive moves in the Red Sea. They are yet to target any of the launch platforms or any of the Houthi bases where these things are being fired from or originating from. So right now, they send the missiles up. We swat them out of the sky using much more expensive interceptors. Our people in harm's way, and they are fighting with one arm tied behind their back. And look, I am no big proponent of Team America World Police. I don't think we should get involved in every bar brawl that breaks out. But I can tell you this, fighting half-assed is a surefire way to get your butt kicked. So if you're going to fight, you either fight all out with everything you have or don't. Pick one. Going in halfway, fighting with one hand, tying behind your backs, hamstringing your battlefield commanders is a recipe for disaster. History has shown it over and over again. I'll get off my soapbox now. Also going on this morning, we got Barry Silbert from Digital Currency Group. He has announced that he is resigning from the board of directors. He is no longer the chairman of the board of the directors. He will remain as CEO at Digital Currency Group, but he's stepping down from the board. He will be replaced by Digital Currency Group CFO Mike Schiff, which is a really hard name to pronounce. I believe this is a step in the direction of getting ETF approval from the SEC. Barry Silbert is something of a controversial figure He has been under the microscope in New York for that $1.1 billion promissory note that he used to bail out Genesis, one of his subsidiaries that ended up filing for bankruptcy anyway. That worked kind of like this. I'm Jack. I own 5 businesses. One of my businesses is going bankrupt. So I take a piece of paper and I write, I owe you $1.1 billion on that piece of paper, and I hand it off to my subsidiary. And now my subsidiary puts that in their asset column and they say, see, we're solvent. Meanwhile, the parent company now has a $1.1 billion liability on their books. That's what Barry Silbert did to try to bail out Genesis. It did not work. They ended up filing Chapter 11 anyway, and he's had regulators all over him for that move. And it looks like him stepping down from the chairman of the board is, I guess, a way to increase oversight on Barry Silbert's behavior, and maybe that is a step in the direction of ETF approval. I suspect that was something like a negotiation with the SEC that was going on behind closed doors. We've also got 1 in 3 business leaders surveyed said that they laid somebody off, that they replaced workers in 2023 with AI. Now, these are mostly large companies, but it does look like at least some jobs are already being displaced by artificial intelligence. And if you recall, most of the stories about layoffs that we heard in 2023, they were pretty much white-collar jobs that were being lost, white-collar jobs where it's easy to replace a bean counter with an AI chatbot. And it looks like there is more of that on the horizon for 2024. And of course, the bad economic vibes are in the news again. More than nearly 2/3 of people say they are worse off financially than they were a year ago. And all of the academics and the economists are scratching their head and say, that can't be right. My research paper that I did my thesis on says otherwise. Well, people go by what they feel, by their own life experiences. And outside of a college classroom or a CNBC production studio, life has gotten a lot harder for people. And people vote their own experiences. People, if you ask people, are you better off financially or not? They're going to go by how life is for them. They're not going to go based on what a chart on CNBC is telling them or based on what Paul Krugman is telling them. You guys have never had it so good. What's the matter with you? Can't you just show some appreciation? That's not rain dripping down your back. And with that, why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in markets this morning. While we're doing that, guys, don't forget that like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. We do this every morning. So have your coffee with the melon heads. And the fear greed index is back in extreme greed territory, guys. We've been here for a couple of days now at 79. The S&P 500 is just barely positive this morning, up 1.4 points, an entire 0.003%. So basically flat for the S&P 500. We've got the Dow is marginally negative, down 8 points this morning. And the NASDAQ is positive by 24 points, so tech leading the way higher this morning. The S&P, I would add, is within striking distance of an all-time high. I believe 4790 is the all-time high in the S&P 500. The U.S. dollar index, meanwhile, continues its slide, another 17 basis points down, 101.30 on the Dixie. And looking over at the bond market, we've got the 30-year Treasury is down another 5 basis points this morning, 3.99. On the 30-year, we've got the 10-year at 3.841, down 4.5 points. The 2-year, 4.281%. That's down about 1 point. And the 1-month Treasury is at 5.373, down 1 point this morning. Reverse repo watch, we were up by about another $21 billion yesterday, currently at $793 billion in the reverse repo. That is up from a low of about 600 and what we hit about 670 not too long ago. Typically, into the end of the year, we get a spike in the reverse repo as the end of quarter and end of year transactions happen. So I expect this number is going to rise for the next couple of days and then resume its decline. Case in point, guys, you see this big spike that we had here. This was at the end of 2022. We saw reverse repo go where it was averaging around 2.1 trillion, and we saw a spike all the way up to 2.5. It didn't last, though. It came right back down and ended up settling lower. So we'll probably see something like that into the next few days. Don't panic if you see a big spike in reverse repo. We know it's coming. On the commodities board right now, we've got gold is looking real good this morning. February gold futures at $2,080. That's up 10.5 or about 0.5% higher this morning. March silver futures 24.33. That's down about 6 cents or 1/4 of 1%. We've got platinum and palladium are both down a fraction of 1%. And West Texas Intermediate crude February futures, $75.34. That is down 20 cents this morning, or about 0.25%. But oil is still well off its recent lows on Middle East tension. And here is the main story, guys. Argentina's new president lays off 5,000 government employees hired in 2023 before he took office. I guess all those people were saying, hey, Sergio Massa wants to hire new employees. Hey, yeah, I got a job. And Milei comes in and says, you're gone. The administration of Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, said on Tuesday that his government won't renew contracts for more than 5,000 employees hired this year before he took office. The move was part of a sweeping plan of cutbacks and devaluation announced by the right-wing libertarian since he took office on December 10th to transform Argentina's struggling economy. And you always got to love this. Whenever the press has somebody that they're trying to vilify or demonize, they're always going to say the ultra right wing, the uber right wing, the right wing libertarian. They'll always add that pejorative on there. Look, libertarians might be economically right wing, but socially they're pretty far from it. Socially, libertarians are about as far left wing as you can get. So just slapping a right-wing label on Javier Milei, okay, maybe that sounded really good in the echo chamber that is the Associated Press, but it doesn't really hold water anywhere else in the world. The contracts for other government employees who were hired prior to 2023 will be reviewed, authorities said. The 2023 cutoff is apparently meant to target the practice of outgoing presidents padding the payrolls in their final year. With inflation expected to reach about 200% by the end of the year, Milei has pledged to reduce government regulations and payrolls and allow the privatization of state-run industries as a way to boost exports and investment. So far, Milei is doing what he promised to do. He has already cut half of the government agencies. He's devalued the peso. He has now cut 5,000 government employees. But the big one that remains to be seen is, will he get rid of the Argentinian central bank? And that is the one I can't wait to see, because imagine a world where a country gets rid of their central bank that has given them 200% inflation and the whole thing doesn't collapse. What if, just a big what if, hypothetically, you get rid of the central bank and things get better? It's a good bet that they, with a capital T, here it comes. Here comes they with a capital T. The tinfoil hat is coming out. It's a good bet that they will not let that happen. All right. Call me crazy. Something bad is going to happen before he gets to the point where he actually gets rid of the central bank and things get better. Something will happen. They'll try to make it worse. They cannot allow that to succeed, because that would set a dangerous precedent. Remember, guys, we didn't have a central bank in the United States for the first, 160 years or so, 150 years of the country. There was no central bank. We did just fine, didn't we? It wasn't until after we had a central bank where things like depressions and recessions every 2 years became a big thing. So moving on, guys, we've got this one going on in the Economic Times this morning. U.S. shoots down 12 Houthi attack drones and 5 missiles in the Red Sea. The United States said on Tuesday that it had shot down 12 attack drones and 5 missiles, which it claimed were launched by the Iran-backed Houthis. There was no damage to ships in the area or injuries reported by U.S. Central Command. U.S. assets, to include the USS Laboon, which is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and FA-18 Super Hornets from the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, shot down 12 one-way attack drones, 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles, and 2 land attack cruise missiles in the southern Red Sea that were fired by the Houthis over a 10-hour period, which began at approximately 6:30 a.m. Santa time. On December 26th, there was no damage to ships in the area or reported injuries. So 17 attacks in one day, and that's the ones that were intercepted. We don't know how many were actually launched. That is the busiest single day yet. The frequency, the number of these attacks is increasing. So far, Operation Prosperity Garden has not had the desired effect. It has not brought an end to these attacks, although maybe fewer ships are getting hit, but more attacks are being launched. We know where this one is going, guys. We know what this looks like. Sooner or later, one of these missiles is going to get through and all hell is going to break loose. You can't sit there and be shot at all day and just hope nothing gets through. And then eventually one does get through and they're going to be surprised and they're going to say, oh, this is an outrage. You knew it was going to come. Either fight all the way or don't fight at all. And if you're not willing to fight all the way, then get out. Why are we defending Hong Kong ships full of Hong Kong cargo bound for Europe? Why are U.S. destroyers doing that job? Doesn't the rest of the world have a Navy? Let the rest of the world defend their own ships. If nobody is going to chip into the defense of their ships, it shouldn't just be the U.S.'s job to do this. It's unbelievable what's going on in the Red Sea right now. Fight all the way with everything you have or not at all. Barry Silbert resigns as Grayscale chairman and to be replaced with Mike Schiff. Schiff is the current CFO of Silbert's digital currency group and will take over on January 1st, Grayscale said in an SEC filing. Grayscale Investments, whose application to turn its Bitcoin trust into a U.S. spot exchange traded fund is being considered by the SEC, said Barry Silbert had resigned as chairman and will be replaced by Mark Schiff. Schiff, Digital Currency Group's chief financial officer, will replace Silbert as of January 1st, Grayscale said in an SEC filing without giving a reason for the changes. Mark Murphy, Digital Currency Group's president, also resigned from the board. The SEC has delayed several ETF applications, including those of Grayscale, BlackRock, ARK21 shares, VanEck, and Hashdex, many of which have met with the regulator and filed amended documentation as year-end approaches. The agency must approve or reject ARK21 shares, the first deadline to approach, by January 10th. So we could hear very soon about an ETF approval or rejection by January 10th. Silbert's Digital Currency Group, which owns Grayscale, was sued in October by New York Attorney General Letitia James for allegedly defrauding more than 230,000 investors, including at least 29,000 New Yorkers, of more than $1 billion. James also charged Silbert with defrauding the public by trying to conceal heavy losses. Digital Currency Group and Silbert rejected these allegations. Now, guys, when Three Arrows Capital went belly up, that was all the way back, I think it was late 2021 when Three Arrows Capital went bankrupt. Or it might have been the end of 22. It was more than a year ago that 3AC went down. Genesis lost more than $1 billion when that happened. And so to make up for those losses, Barry Silbert takes out a piece of paper and he writes, I owe you $1.1 billion. Ooh, might want to hold on to that one. That's a valuable. We intend to fully reimburse you. And he handed that promissory note, that IOU, off to Genesis. Genesis took that IOU, put it in their asset column and said, see, we're solvent. All of our losses have been made up for. Well, the problem is what that act did was that took all of the losses from Genesis and it socialized those losses among all of the Digital Currency Group holdings. Digital Currency Group at the time also owned CoinDesk, and they also owned the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. And, well, Letitia James, the Attorney General in New York, New York Attorney General, she sued Silbert saying that was fraudulent. When she did that, Silbert disagrees. Well, Genesis ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Anyway, it wasn't successful in saving the company. It looks like with all of this regulatory buzzards circling overhead at Digital Currency Group, Grayscale just was not going to get the approval to be the SEC, to be the Bitcoin spot ETF with Barry Silbert as the chairman of the board. And so him stepping down may have been some overture to the SEC to say, look, this is no longer Barry Silbert's plaything where he can just write billion-dollar promissory notes whenever he feels like it. Now we've actually got a new chairman of the board who is going to oversee him here. So it looks like maybe on the surface, this is something that is going to help Grayscale get approval for a Bitcoin ETF. I would add, guys, I remain very skeptical of the Bitcoin ETF, besides my thinking it's a terrible idea because I've seen what asset-backed ETFs have done in the gold and silver space, and I don't want that for Bitcoin. But I also think it's going to be a very big selling of the news event. I think there's just way too much excitement around this Bitcoin ETF. The price has run up way too much. I think when it actually gets here, a lot of people are going to be disappointed. Recent data shows AI job losses are rising, but the numbers don't tell the full story. This one has been around for a little while, but we've heard a lot of this about how AI is going to put everybody on the unemployment rolls and we need to roll out universal basic income. I've never really bought into that line of thinking, but there is some data point that shows AI is already displacing white-collar work. According to a recent report of 750 business leaders using AI from Resume Builder, 37% say that the technology had replaced workers in 2023. Now, it doesn't say 37% of workers were replaced. It says 37% of business leaders who were surveyed said that AI had replaced workers in 2023. Meanwhile, 44% reported that there will be layoffs in 2024 resulting from AI efficiency. But even amid reports of AI-inspired layoffs, many experts disagree with Elon Musk's view that we're all going to be unemployed. Look, basically, a lot of the big firms, big companies have started displacing some workers with AI. But long story short, most of the small operations, smaller companies are yet to fully embrace AI. So we're not all going to be on the unemployment line by the end of next week or anything as severe as that. And there is one line at the end of this one that I wanted to mention here. While layoffs happening as a result of the current generation of AI, there's no historical evidence that technological advancements such as this will result in mass unemployment. Pay attention, all you big UBI proponents. There is no evidence that technological advancements result in mass unemployment. The workforce has a history of malleability, and increased technological capacity can result in higher value work, as Sandela says, and more productivity that future generations of AI will likely learn to handle. So I've been saying this pretty much for the entirety of this last year and a few months that AI mania has been a thing. Everybody's saying we're all going to lose our jobs. Look, AI is a productivity enhancing tool that when properly harnessed can make the average worker far more valuable and thus worthy of a higher paycheck. It's not going to put everybody on unemployment, much like every great technological innovation, like the internet, like the transistor, like electricity, like the steam engine, like all these other technological advancements. Yes, they displaced a lot of jobs, but no, they didn't just put everybody out of work. People went and did other jobs. People became more productive. It gave people free time to pursue other careers, other entire industries that sprang up around them. AI is going to be no different. And last but not least, most Americans feel the economy is in recession despite the strong jobs market and steady growth. According to this survey, nearly 6 in 10 Americans feel like the U.S. economy is currently in recession despite avoiding the sharp downturn widely predicted by economists last year. This holds true across generations and income levels. So it's not just millennials with low incomes that are feeling this. It's not just rich baby boomers that are feeling this. It is widespread across the board. All right, here we go. Gen X and millennials were the most likely to say that the economy is in a recession at 65% of Gen X and 60% of millennials, respectively. So almost 2/3 of Gen X and millennials say the economy is in a recession. However, baby boomers and Gen Z are not far behind, with 58% of baby boomers and 55% of Gen Z saying the economy is currently in a downturn. And nearly equal proportions of low-income households, those making less than $50,000, and high-income households making more than $100,000, also said that the economy was in a recession. This is universal across generations, across income spectrums. Almost everybody says we're in a recession, all except Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman says we've never had it better. Some 66% of Americans said that the current economic environment has had a negative impact on their finances, while 64% said they have adjusted their financial habits in response, the Bankrate survey found. Americans judge the economy's strength by their own individual experiences living within it, and nationwide numbers often don't tell the same story as their finances. While economists differ over what makes a recession, most agree that it is a prolonged period of low or negative economic growth with a serious increase in unemployment. So the average experience felt by the average person is very recessionary, even though all the economists will agree it's the best economy ever. You can't have a big disconnect like that between Wall Street and Main Street for long, guys. It just does not last. And the disconnect is getting even bigger. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mr. Crypto Canvas, who says, what's up with record level corporate buybacks? Corporate buybacks, especially at the end of the year, are very common, Crypto Canvas, because at the end of the year, a lot of executive bonuses, their compensation is tied to stock performance. So at the end of the year, if the company takes this big pre-authorized buyback and they buy a whole bunch of their stock and they drive it to an all-time high, they trigger those big payouts and those big compensation packages. So why corporate buybacks? Because corporate executive compensation is directly tied to the performance of the stock. And based on that, is it any surprise that company after company is buying back record amounts of stock? So I'm not surprised to see that. That is just the short-sightedness of the leadership at the average publicly traded company. Thank you, Crypto Canvas, for the super chat, the support of the channel, sir. And thank you, Brian Zarb. What's going on, Brian? He says, give Jack some love this Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well, Brian. Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing so much value to your viewers. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Brian, very much, sir. Appreciate the super chat, the support of the channel, and the well wishes. Merry Christmas to you and yours, sir. Appreciate that very much. JJ Watt says 2024 news headline, Biden admin mandating Fed now to reduce Iranian terror cells from carrying out traditional attacks on U.S. soil. Maybe we could sprinkle a little bit of pandemic and maybe a little bit of climate change into that headline, JJ Watt. I feel like there's a couple of crises du jour that we missed in that sarcastic headline there, which I'm not entirely sure it was sarcastic, but I'm picking up my sarcasm detector's going ding a little bit here. But yeah, I think we can squeeze a little bit more crisis into there. You know, maybe a little racial animosity. You know, hit those targeted demographics a little bit. Also, I'm sure we can do better than that, JJ Watt. But thank you, sir. Appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. And I know what you're talking about, brother. And thank you, Steve Woitas says, is the Fed reverse repo a sizable source of liquidity driving markets higher? Yes, it is. Or at least in my opinion. There's some people out there who say, no, it isn't. In my opinion, it is. That money is leaving the reverse repo. It's going somewhere. My guess, it's going into the bond market, whether it's going into short-term T-bills, long-term T-bonds, or directly into stocks. It's flowing into assets, driving their valuations higher. Absolutely, positively. It's also been being spent into the economy as the government borrows it and then spends it into the economy wastefully, I might add. See also all those subsidies of electric vehicles that are now piling up in graveyards that are auto dealerships right now. So when that reverse repo runs out, watch for that liquidity shock. It may not be an overnight thing because there's hundreds of billions of dollars in the Treasury General account. And Janet Yellen could start to reduce issuance right around the same time the reverse repo runs out, to try to buy more time, to extend the liquidity a little bit further. So it may not be an overnight thing when reverse repo runs out. And they may start doing that before the reverse repo runs out, or the Fed could end their quantitative tightening before reverse repo runs out. So there's a lot of things that could happen that could mean reverse repo hitting zero isn't an automatic black swan switch goes off. So something to keep in mind. But thank you, Steve Woitas. Appreciate the super chat. Support of the channel, sir. And thank you to Viva Mundo 08, who says, will Sergio back off his central bank promise? Well, Sergio Massa was he was the big they candidate in Argentina. Sergio Massa, he lost. He was their big economic minister. Now we've got Javier Milei is in charge in Argentina. Will he back off his central bank promise? Well, he didn't do it on day one, so you could argue that he has already backed off it a little bit. He didn't use his signature chainsaw method of just get rid of it and then worry about the details later. He's being a little bit more surgical in his approach. So maybe that's a good thing, or maybe he finally got into office and he realized this is going to be harder than it looked. And so he's taking his sweet time. But I hold out hope, Viva Mundo 08. I hold out hope that he actually does it. You've already got 200% inflation in Argentina. So what do they have to lose? All right. They haven't gone full Venezuela yet, but that's by a narrow margin. What do you have to lose? Once inflation has hit 200% in your country, just close the central bank. Just turn it off. Lock the door. Don't let anybody in. Just say, nope, sorry, we're done here. And just see what happens. I mean, maybe inflation goes to 201%. Would that be terrible? Yes. But is that a lot more terrible than 200%? No. Or maybe things get better. Maybe when the money printers are just physically blocked, when you don't let people anywhere near the buttons, maybe things get better. I just throw them out there. You guys do what you want with them. Thank you, Viva Mundo 08. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. And thank you, everybody, for your generosity and supporting the channel this morning and for having your coffee with the melon heads. Hope you guys have an awesome remainder of the year. Also, shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for everything you do for the channel. We are going to move our Patreon Zoom call to Thursday this week. Tomorrow, with the holiday week, it's messed with my schedule. So we are going to schedule that one later today. We'll have it tomorrow. Links down below to all that good stuff should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Until next time, live small and dream big.